We need to resurrect Julius Caesar from the dead, put him in power so that he can combat the corporations and the banks and stop them from taking all the land. Now, I got quite a bit of negative feedback when I suggested this in a previous video, and I didn't really explain myself that well, so I'm going to explain myself a little bit better. The main reason for the negative feedback was I suggest that land reforms are a better idea than taxing the rich. I believe land reforms are a much better solution to the housing crisis than simply taxing the rich. But first of all, we need to quickly ask, why did I bring in Julius Caesar? See, Julius Caesar, what happened with him, right? So Julius Caesar, why was he killed? He was actually killed because he wanted to bring in land reforms. See, in Rome, there was these wealthy oligarchs buying up all the land. And they were becoming so powerful that they rivaled the state's power itself. So Julius Caesar saw this and decided to try and restrict the amount of land people can own. He was inspired by Tiberius Gracchus. Tiberius Gracchus, what he said, he also brought in a law earlier that says no man can own more than 500 aequarii, which is about 300 acres. So he restricted any one person from becoming too powerful than owning more than 300 acres. And Julius Caesar wanted to do something similar. So what happened to Julius Caesar? Well, as we know, he was killed. He was killed by the very people that were going to benefit from this. The same thing happened to Tiberius Gracchus. Him and 300 of his friends were all clubbed to death. It was even more brutal what happened to Tiberius. And I think that's a good lesson to learn. Like, that's what happens when you actually rival. That's what happens when you actually take on power. You end up getting killed, right? So, why do I think land reforms is a better idea than taxing the rich? See, with taxing the rich and even introducing something like an LVT, a land tax, what happens is that they can pass on those costs to the consumers. They can pass on those costs to you. If you want to tax housing, okay, well, just make the rent go up. You know, they can pass. You could do things like restrict it by, capping rental prices or something like this. But in the end, they could find ways of just passing it on to the consumer. So that's what happens. That's what can happen with taxing the rich, especially with housing. With land reform, all it does is stops the monopoly. It restricts how much housing any company can own. So I'm wondering why anyone would be against this. For example, I've even introduced a law idea. No single company or financial institution may own more than 1,000 residential properties. Now, I've been quite generous. 1,000 is a lot of residential properties that one company can own. So I'm basically saying that, you can have rental properties, you can have rental companies, but, no one can have more than 1,000 residential properties. I mean, why would anyone be against that law? Do you want giant rental companies? I don't understand. That seems like a reasonable law to me, and it's something that we could put in place. But no, maybe we should just, go back to the drawing board and just tax the rich more. I'm not against taxing the rich. I'm just saying that this is a better solution to the housing crisis, in my opinion. I don't see any problem with that. See, the problem gets worse. And it's growing. Every day, companies are buying up more and more property around the world and becoming large rental companies. And some of them are even like, the scary one for me is this: Lloyds Bank. The bank in the UK has become a landlord. By 2030, that should be 30 there, they want to own 50,000 homes, which is actually not that bad, 50,000 homes. But that's just the start. They want to own more than that. In Germany, it's a lot worse. The rental market in Germany is kind of crazy. Vonovia, they own 400,000 homes. And there's tons of other companies that just own shitloads of properties in Germany. It's actually kind of crazy in Germany. And the crazy thing is that there's all these, it's not just in Germany or the UK, it's everywhere. In America, you've got Innovation Homes, AMH, Progress Residential, Blackstone own Tricon in residential in Canada. You know, it keeps going on. These giant corporate conglomerates are owning all the land. And there's, I'm stuttering now, but look, BlackRock. We've heard of BlackRock, right? Did you know that BlackRock own a percentage of Lloyds Bank? BlackRock own a percentage of Vonovia. BlackRock own a percentage of Innovation Homes, AMH, Progress Residential, Blackstone, Tricon Residential. You see? So, and not only that, Vanguard also own a percentage of these. Not only that, Vanguard own a percentage of BlackRock. They own each other. It's just like this huge corporate conglomerate are buying up the houses. It's like this. It's its own entity almost. It's a living. It's like almost like. It's almost like capitalism has become this living, breathing entity that owns itself and owns everything. It's kind of scary. So yeah, maybe we should just tax them more. Maybe that'll fix the issue. But again, I'm not against taxing them. I'm just saying, ooh, you know, we need a bigger solution, in my opinion. Now, why did I say that Lloyds Bank becoming a landlord was the scariest part? Well, I'll tell you, right? I've said it in the previous video, and I need to sink it into people's brain. What people don't realize is once a mortgage lender also becomes a renter, it threatens you. Now, why is this? So in 2008, we'll go back to 2008, there was a financial crash, right? And all the property values started going down and people couldn't pay their mortgages. So the banks were kind of left with they had to repossess all these properties, and the property's value was going down. There was nothing they could do with it. They just had to sell it for cheap. The banks lost loads of money. All these mortgage lenders, they lost loads of money. This time, when there is going to be an economic crash coming soon, it will be different. I'll tell you why, right? And this is where it gets really scary, because the banks become landlords. Then there's an economic crash. Then there's mortgage defaults. People are not paying their mortgages. People can't pay their mortgages. So then repossessions happens again. The banks take the properties. But this time, instead of selling the properties, the mortgage lenders and the banks, they're going to keep them and they're going to own everything. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Do you hear me? The banks will own the property and rent it back to you. Within a very short time, all the banks, all the corporations will just, if there's a crash, they will take all the land and they will become the largest landowners in your country, no matter what country you're in. America, UK, France, Germany, wherever you are watching this, the banks and the corporations will own all the properties and they will scoop it up. They'll take it and it'll be theirs. And there's nothing really you can do about it. I mean, maybe you could just tax them more. You see what I'm saying? This is the problem. See, taxing the rich can fix a lot of issues, but when it comes to the housing crisis, there's a bigger issue at play. There's a bigger plan at play. And the only way to restrict it is some sort of law like this. No single company or financial institution may own more than 1,000 residential properties. And, you know, my conspiracy brain gets going. You know, this guy, Bill Gates, he's buying up all the farmland in the US. And people are saying, oh, don't worry, that's just a normal thing to do. Did you know that Bill Gates visited Keir Starmer in the UK, our Prime Minister, in October 2024? 2 weeks later, I think, in November 2024, Keir Starmer introduced a new law that, well, he was trying to introduce inheritance tax to farmers. Now, what this would do would just cripple farmers. It would cripple the idea of passing down the farm to your son kind of thing, because they wouldn't be able to pay the tax. It's kind of weird, right? He visits Keir Starmer, then we try destroying our own farming. He's buying farms. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's a coincidence, you know, that's how things are. But I suppose you're wondering whether there's hope, whether there's any hope. In my last video, again, I was saying, you know, there's no hope. You know, you just gotta accept it. It's gonna happen whether you like it or not. There's nothing you can do. But you know, I would love if someone was campaigning for maybe, you know, bringing in a land reform and stopping companies from owning a certain number of land. Like, that would be good if someone could do that. And there is some hope, because that happened in Berlin. Yes, Berlin had this very same issue. In a small, within that city, the corporations and companies owned all the properties, and they were a nightmare. The rental prices were going crazy. So actually Berlin introduced some sort of, I can't remember how it works, but they basically took about 200,000 apartments from these people and forced them to give them back to smaller residential. I don't know how it works, but they succeeded. They basically brought in a land reform in Berlin. So maybe it can work. If it works at a smaller scale, why can't it happen at a bigger scale? So yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. You can lambast me all you like, but